My friends, it's Griff Neilson, your holistic lifestyle hacker, and today I've got a really good one for you. I listened to a podcast over the weekend that said that our happiness is directly linked to the expectations that we have of ourselves. And that goes for every area of life, whether it's physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, financially, relationship-wise, etc. And I really appreciated what he was saying because I believe that we live in a time where it's so fast-paced, where the stakes are so high, where the competition is so great, that it's easy to get caught up into leveling extremely high expectations of ourselves. Let me give you an example. I'll use myself. I listen to podcasts. One of them is called The School of Greatness by Lewis Howes, and it's a phenomenal podcast, and he brings on some of the greatest minds in the world, leaders, entrepreneurs, business owners, speakers, etc., athletes. And you know, I find myself, as I'm listening to these people, I find myself creating an expectation of myself that mirrors them. And oftentimes, unbeknownst to myself, at a conscious level, I'll start to feel a little bit anxious. I'll start to feel a little down. Sometimes I'll start to feel depressed. And almost 9 times out of 10, when I step back, I can ask myself, where are your expectations? And if I'm real with myself, I come to the conclusion that I'm trying to level up to these expectations of these people that I'm listening about. You know, Griff, why aren't you at this level? Why aren't you impacting more people? Why aren't you fill in the blank? You know, like all these people, not only them, but why aren't you living up to your own expectations? Because I've got very high expectations of myself. And this is kind of a theme that we've talked about in the past. But I believe that the gap between where we are and where the expectation lies is where our misery, our anxiety, our depression, hopelessness, etc., I believe that's where those emotions stem from. So, you know, it's interesting. And I just had this conversation with a good friend and a client today, you know, as she was struggling a little bit with, you know, her relationship with food. There is a certain expectation and a certain picture that she had of herself that she was holding on to. And this picture, this expectation that she had was driving a behavior that was ultimately going to cost her a lot as far as physically and mentally, emotionally, spiritually. So I think the question comes down to this: what expectations do we have of ourselves? And I believe that the way that we can answer that is by really taking a self-inventory, looking ourselves in the mirror, maybe even physically, and asking ourselves, what expectations do I have of myself? And here's the next question: what picture of myself do I have in my brain that is running 24/7, 365 at a subconscious level? Think about that. There's a picture of you, a picture of the expectations that you have of yourself that is determining, in large part, your happiness. If you're living up to those expectations every day, you're probably pretty happy. If you're not living up to those expectations every day, then you're probably not. So what are we to do? Well, A, we can change the expectation. If our expectations are unrealistic, we can change it. If they're not unrealistic and we need to bump up our efforts to match that, that might be the answer as well. But we have to make sure that the expectation is obtainable, that it is realistic. So really what we're doing is we're becoming aware. We are becoming aware of how we're feeling. We're becoming aware if we're happy, if we're in between, if we're miserable, if we're angry, if we're pissed all the time. All of these things, we're looking, we're saying, okay, where is my emotional state most of the time? Then we have to look and say, okay, well, what is my expectations of myself? You know, I've got this expectation in this area of my life, physically, emotionally, mentally, financially, with relationships, etc. That is based also, and this is where you have to be very introspective, that is based on the picture that I have in my head of who I am and who I, quote, should be. And then once we have that, we can ask ourselves, okay, do we need to change it? A, do we either change the expectation if it's unrealistic, or B, do we step up a notch? If our expectation is realistic, maybe we just need to step up our game a little bit, okay? I hope this makes sense. I'm kind of questioning if it did. I hope it did. I believe that this is literally a very simple equation that most of us are not getting. If we can just understand where our expectations are, if we're living up to them, what needs to change, that will help us in our happiness. Thank you so much for watching, my friends. Remember to never excuse away your inner greatness. And remember, as always, life is good. Have a fantastic week. I will see you next week. Take care.